Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and I want to talk about a concept that kind of came up when I was on the Three Scoundrels in the Cantina podcast with Old Man Logan and Avant Docs. The other co-host, Bones, was not in attendance, so I was filling in for Bones, which I guess fills into the nickname Timu Bones. Anyway, we're going to be talking about Omicron investment, and this is because Logan equipped a territory battle Omicron for the number of subs that they got, and he asked Avant and I to choose it for him. And as we were going through this, I realized that it's kind of a good idea to just cover not just TB, but GAC, Territory Wars in general, and kind of talk about which Omicrons make sense, which ones maybe to hold back on, and how you can kind of understand and navigate that. So let's give a shout out to our channel members. Thank you for their continued support. If you're ever interested, y'all know where that link is. It's down below, along with a link to Discord. I really appreciate you guys, and if you can't do a channel membership, that's all right. That's okay. Just subscribe. That's all I can ask is just please subscribe and like this content so you see more stuff like it. Let's get out there. I realized I cut myself off of that intro. My bad. Anyway, let's get out here. Let's talk about some territory, some territory war. Let's talk about Omicron investments between Territory Wars, Grand Arena, and TB. The first thing I'm going to say is ask yourself the question, which ones are going to be a long-term investment? I've made a few mistakes with this in my day, one of them being Admiral Akbar. Bobby, can you stop scratching? Swear, everybody's interrupting me today. My original video got scrapped because my daughter came down and I don't have time to go back and do what I was doing, so I've got to completely revisit that. Side note, I was literally going through, because we're trying to teach her to read, I literally had her going through like the droids and the clones and telling me what letters were in their name. Just thought I'd share that. Anyway, Admiral Akbar. I invested in this. I thought it'd be good, and it's just never really done a lot. It was like a backwall team at the time I invested in it, so that was a big mistake, right? Another one that I would probably say I regret was Boba Fett's Sign of Django. Where's he at? That's one where I equipped it, never really got a ton of use out of it because none of my guilds cared enough about TB or Territory Wars at the time. It's one I've used here and there, but it's not one I'm like, oh yeah, that's really worth it. But I also equipped the Captain Phasma's Omicron. For a long time, this was a staple part of my older guild's Territory War defense. And this kind of just goes into, and again, I'm showing Territory War stuff and, a little bit of GAC, but this kind of makes its way into Grand Arena as well, where I also did First Order, or the TIE Pilot there. Sometimes there's certain Omicrons that are good for the moment, and then kind of die off. And I would say that Phasma and First Order TIE Pilot kind of fit into that category. At one point in time, when there wasn't a lot to pick from, they were quality. And now they're kind of fading away. So as you're getting into Omicrons, if you don't hear us talk about them, it's probably not worth equipping because you're going to want to save it for something that's going to last. Something like maybe Iden, where a lot of us still get some very, very good use out of her. Or you think about the ones on Starkiller and Malicos that we're still using a lot, right? That's kind of where you could say, yeah, you know what? If you're not hearing a lot of talk about it at the top level, not that it couldn't be, worth it at a time, but down the line, you want to be able to invest those Omicrons into something that you're going to use a lot, right? Because those Omicrons do come in and out of style. Like, they absolutely kind of go in those phases where sometimes you're using them a lot, and other times they're just going to kind of sit there and do nothing. Another very good example of an Omicron that I sometimes get use out of and sometimes don't, if I'm being brutally honest now, is my, where is it? Gosh, I know I had it somewhere. The Qui-Gon Jinn. There's times I don't get any use out of this. Either it's on defense and they don't get to that wall, but also I might bring it on offense, but I don't really find a place where I'm willing to drop the banners for him dying to complete something. And so, not that it's not a good Omicron, but it's another one that I'm finding at times I'm using less and less because of the way that I've set my offense and defense up. And so, what I want you just to think about and understand is some of these Omicrons might potentially lose their value over time as other things come into the game or as other teams are building more and more. And you'd rather invest in stuff that's going to, have that long-term benefit. So a couple things you could do to understand, hey, does it have long-term benefit? Is it in a Galactic Legend team for a GAC or a Territory Wars? In territory battles, what I'm going to tell you is most Galactic Legends do not need an Omicron to make that team work. Lord Vader doesn't need any Omicrons to make that work. Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, Leia Organa, they don't need him. Jabba does not. He doesn't even need the Hutt Cartel to make him work in territory battles. JML really doesn't need Jedi Knight Cal Kestis' Omicron to make that work. And so, when you're thinking through, like, TB, don't worry about the GL thing. For other game modes, I definitely would say GLs are a safe bet. Making that team as good as humanly possible is a very good thought. The next thing that I would say is, where it could be smart to, another way to kind of rationalize investing in an Omicron is think about the, I'll say like that, with a long-term benefit, how does it get used down the line, right? Are there ways that Omicron is going to be useful inside of other instances? Another example of that would be, getting into, say, like Seer Junda. Seer's Omicron is about UFUs, right? No Galactic Legends, but it's UFU. It's UFU based. Okay, that's pretty solid, right? Like there's a lot of different UFUs that I can use with her. There's a lot of different things I could do there. Whereas with, say, and I'm just going to pick on him, right? Like Captain Rex, it's Phoenix in 5v5 and Clone Troopers in 3v3. Now, it's a very good one, but you're much more limited to its use comparative to, like, Seer is the entire UFU faction. Captain Rex's kind of changes between those. So if you have an Omicron to equip and it's, I can invest it in Captain Rex, or I could invest it in, say, and I'm going to pick another character kind of along those, on, let's say Admiral Raddus. I have a full Rogue One team. I have a full Phoenix team. If I also don't have a Clone Trooper team, the AdRad Omicron is better from the standpoint that Captain Rex in 3v3 does not get any benefit from running this with Phoenix, right? He gets these things up here, but he does not get this text, and that's important to understand. I know that's kind of weird to say because I love Captain Rex, but if you don't have the full benefit of that team, I would not be equipping an Omicron if you can't take full advantage of it. And that's a big reason why I don't have Dr. Afra's GAC Omicrons, is because they're only for 5v5. Now, this also plays a massive role in why I don't invest in a lot of territory battle Omicrons. And by a lot, I mean any. One, I found ways around not needing them, but it also comes down to investing in that character, getting them to higher relic levels. You got to think, Rise of the Empire starts at Relic 5. So let's say you went ahead and invested in your Rebel Officer Leia Organa Omicron. Right? Hey, I built my Rebel Officer Leia Organa. I'm going to invest in this Omicron for territory battles. Where the hell is she at? So, here she is. Now, when you initially unlock her, it is for Jedi Knight Luke. And Jedi Knight Luke requires her to be at Relic 3. Right? When you go through, I forget where it is. There it is. Relic 3 is where you're initially going to invest in her in. She eventually does become a Relic 5 requirement for Galactic Legends Leia. So you think, for Rise of the Empire, that Omicron you equip to Rebel Officer Leia Organa only allows you to do a combat mission on Coruscant or Corellia. You need to bring her to Relic 8 or above to attempt missions on half of the planets here. On Lothal, Ring of Kafrene, or Scarif, you need to bring her to Relic 8 or above. So the question you have to ask yourself, am I willing to make that level of investment? Am I willing to eventually Relic 9 her for the sake of territory battles? And that's where you can kind of analyze that and say, maybe for a character like Rebel Officer Leia Organa, that doesn't make sense. But somebody like Captain Enoch, who also has a territory battle Omicron, where I could build this team to Relic 9 for their assault battle on Peridia, yeah, that does make a lot more sense. You know what? I could potentially want to bring him to Relic 9 because that will benefit my account. I can use that in a combat. So that's kind of the logic you've got to equip with these Omicrons from TB perspective is, are you willing to Relic 9 that character? And the thing with Territory Battle Omicrons as well that you need to keep in mind, the one difference there, I talked about with Territory Wars in Grand Arena, some of them kind of lose value over time. They're not as important. They get surpassed by other things. With Territory Battles, once you get a team at Relic 9 that goes 2 for 2, You don't need you don't ever need to replace them. They're not going to eventually start getting worse. Like, at least in the current TB state, which Rise of the Empire is meant to last for forever, my teams that get 2 out of 2 on Ring of Kafrene are going to get 2 out of 2 on Ring of Kafrene for the next 50 years if this game was active, right? It doesn't change. So the value of a Territory Battle Omicron is much more consistent, because once you have it, it's going to be that good on every single planet, because those don't change. As new Omicrons come in, you could say, oh, well, maybe Enox isn't as good as one that comes in next year. But Enox is still good enough to get those waves. So with Territory Battle Omicrons, you don't need as many of them, because once you get a team to get 2 out of 2, you don't need to replace them. The last thing I'll say with Territory Battle Omicrons, make sure the characters that you're equipping them on are ones that you're not going to have to eventually put into an operation. Here's a great example. On Lethal, you have to platoon. One of the characters we have to platoon is Finn. And Finn has that Territory Battle Omicron, right? Finn has a TB Omicron there. So if you bring your Finn to Relic 8 or Relic 9 because you want to use him in TB, your guild might end up needing you to put him into an operation. So now you've built Finn, you've built the resistance to Relic 8, and all you're ending up doing is placing all of them in operations because that's what your guild needs. So just recognize that, a little bit selfishly, like there's Rebel Officer Leia Organa at Relic 8. So maybe just selfishly kind of think through that process and say, hey, there's Kyle Katarn, who has another Territory Battle Omicron, right? And look, this guy has the TB Omicron and still has to throw him in operations. So one of the things you could do instead is invest in those characters who aren't in operations, which is why Enoch and even Marok, right? Merrick or Marok, I don't know how to say it. Those characters can be very valuable because they don't have to go inside of an operation, so you can use them in every single phase, and you'd probably be more willing to Relic 9 them. Wrapping this up, GAC Territory Wars. If I'm an account, I personally would probably say you want to go a little bit heavier in GAC early. Because the thing with Territory Wars is those rewards don't begin to make a massive difference until you get to the latter stages of the game, until your guild is getting really good droid brains, really good arrow magnifiers, right, for winning. Before that, you're not getting as much out of those Omicrons, and maybe there's going to be better ones along the way that you'd rather equip. So it might be better to invest some of them in Grand Arena, because some of those Grand Arena teams are good for not just longer, but you're going to get more benefit out of it, whether it's the Inquisitors, your Conquest units, Malicos and Starkiller, things that a lot more players I feel are getting earlier and earlier with access to Proving Grounds and stuff. Those I'd be investing in your GAC, stabilizing your crystal income, and then as you get further in the game, start doing some of those Territory War Omicrons on those high-value teams like the Jabba team or Ahsoka. Keller and Beck is a good one, your Dark Trooper Moff Gideon type stuff. Investing in those teams, and that way you have as good of an advantage as any over the opposition, and it's actually helping you get more rewards that are important long-term in the game. So I hope that makes sense. Probably rambled a bit there, but that's a fat fill video for you. Love you all. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.